the second question is, towards the end of the last vice presidential debate, the moderator, Martha Raddatz, asked both vice presidential candidates their beliefs regarding abortion. So please discuss your own views on this issue. And I'll start with Ms. Hatfield, please.
I'd also like to thank you for having Who's for Life represented tonight. We're happy to be here. I just wanted to start out by giving a quote by Thomas Jefferson, who of course we're all familiar with. He said, "The care of human life and happiness, and not their destruction, is the first and only object of a good government." So abortion is a matter of human life. Whether you believe that the fetus is a human or whether you believe it is not a human, you need to take a stance to decide whether or not abortion is fundamentally acceptable. So right now we have two candidates with very differing views on abortion, of course. First, we have President Barack Obama, who said that defining human life is beyond his paycheck. However, his record as an Illinois senator shows that he supports abortion through all 9 months. And he, in fact, voted against the Born Alive Patient Protection Act to prevent the killing of babies who were born after a failed attempted abortion. He also funnels tax dollars to support abortion that many individual citizens are against. In addition, he supports Roe v. Wade, an act that we saw as judicial activism, and puts the issue of abortion in a set of judges who are not elected by the American people. On the other hand, we have Mitt Romney, who has taken a stance. He says that he believes that human life begins at conception, but he does make exceptions for cases of rape, incest, and the mother's health. He has said that he will end funneling of tax dollars to support abortion, and he'd also like to see Roe v. Wade overturned, of course, by constitutional means, so that the issue of abortion is put back in the hands of the people. So what does this mean for us here at UVA? Well, right now, our tuition dollars, your tax dollars if you are a Virginia resident, and alumni donations are going to support abortions at the university. In fact, since 1991 through 2009, there have been 2,480 abortions by UVA. We believe that this directly violates the university's commitment to honesty and allowing the people to know where their money goes. In addition, UVA is very committed to truth. If you look at the scientific facts as well as the philosophical facts, human life begins at conception. We have Keith Moore, who pointed out that when a male gamete meets a female gamete, a totipotent cell is produced that is an individual human being with its own DNA. In addition, Dr. Alan Guttmacher, who was president of Planned Parenthood, accepted that it is a human life and basically laughed at the idea that anybody could think otherwise. So basically, the question that I would like to throw out there for anyone who would be willing to answer is to indicate scientific evidence that it is not a human being, because our Constitution guarantees the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if it is a human being, that it is unquestionably deserves the right to life.
And thank you again for hosting us this evening. I'd like to address one of the interests that Mr. Jefferson brought up in the quote that my colleague Christina just mentioned. And one of those interests is health. Now, the Feminist Legal Forum believes that a woman should be able to seek guidance about whether to terminate a pregnancy from healthcare professionals, people she trusts, and her doctor, and that the government should not have a say in that. Women should have the full range of reproductive health choices available to them, safe and legal. This includes access to contraception, maternity and newborn care if they choose to have a child, and safe abortion services. The GOP platform calls for outlawing abortion in all cases, including rape and incest. Continuing a pregnancy may put a woman's life in jeopardy, and another pregnancy may threaten the survival of a family in terms of economics. So healthcare is one reason why, and the health of women is one reason why the Feminist Legal Forum supports access to safe and legal abortion. Now, it would be a fallacy to think that health is the only thing at stake here. Aside from religious views, aside from the health of a mother, access to abortion and contraceptive services by women is a matter of economics. Women's access to abortion and other reproductive health care services allows them access to equal employment opportunities and pay. Women are more likely than men to have interrupted careers. They're more likely than men to take time off for family reasons such as child care or elder care, and they're more likely to work part-time. Not only that, when women are employed full-time, they're employed at 77 cents to the dollar of what men make in the same jobs. So restricting access to legal abortion and contraceptives for women directly affects women's jobs and women's opportunities to advance in their careers. Furthermore, the Institute for Women's Policy Research found that the more likely women are to be married and have children under the age of 18, the more likely it is that they'll be low earners and have fewer hours in the labor market. And the opposite is true for men. So the issue of abortion rights and access to contraceptives is not simply a matter of when life begins or your religious view or your opinion about health care. It's a matter of economics that severely affects all women and especially disproportionately affects women in poverty and perpetuates the cyclical poverty cycle.
Well, I like to return to the fact that if it is a human life, you can't at all degrade that value because you want to promote jobs. I understand that I haven't studied that specific causal or possible just correlational information, but I do know that if it is a human being, and again, I'd like to ask anybody here who would be willing to present scientific evidence to the contrary to do so, that you cannot put jobs ahead of a human life. That's not what our country is founded on.
Thank you. Again, I would just reiterate that jobs are not the only issues at stake here in the reproductive, in access to reproductive medicine and safe and legal abortion. And to address your main point of whether or not a fetus is a life, I don't have to, and the Feminist Legal Forum doesn't have to make a case for whether it's a life or not. If we do concede that it's a life, then you have two lives here, not just the fetus's life, but the mother's life. And whether it's a life or not is not something that has been decided by our government. It's not something that is a policy of our president, and isn't something that needs to be addressed in order for the gravity of the importance of access to safe and legal abortion presents.
Yeah, I think Christina's done a pretty good job of making it pretty clear as to what the Ryan ticket supports, and that is that they do not support abortion except in the cases of rape, incest, or if the mother's life is in danger. I think she also did a great job of pointing out that the president's policies, the president's record as an Illinois state senator indicate that he supports abortion pretty much up to birth, which if that's not a clear distinction, I don't know what is. The other thing, the question here is directly referencing the vice presidential debate, and I'm not sure how many people were able to witness that debate, but the Vice President Biden's answer to that was very interesting to me. And in his answer, he said that he believes that life does begin at conception, but he still supports abortion. To me, that contradicts it contradicts each other, and I don't understand. Maybe Alex could explain it to me, but I don't understand how you can believe that life begins at conception and still support abortion. That just does not make sense to me. So yeah, that would be my response.
Yeah, I guess I'll start out by clarifying the Vice President's quote in a very interesting question that was asked by Martha Raddatz. What the Vice President basically said, as you all probably know, both Paul Ryan and Joe Biden are Catholic and were raised by Catholic families, and they were asked about, the original question was about how their faith affects their politics, and Joe Biden's answer was very interesting because he said that he accepted his church's position on abortion but he didn't feel like it was the government's job to impose its religious views on others, such as equally devout Jews or Muslims, or equally devout Protestant Christians who might not have the same views on abortion. And that kind of echoes, I think, the president's stance on abortion, is that this is something that's a very personal question. And I agree with what was said earlier. I do believe, and the president believes, that in a certain sense we do have to have some care and regard for life here. But this question, once again, is very personal. It's between a woman and her doctor, and the president doesn't believe that it's something that the government should interfere in. Obviously the president is pro-choice. His past votes in the Illinois State Senate, I don't think necessarily automatically signify that he supports abortion up until the time of conception. Because again, this is something that, as I was talking about with gay marriage, is very personal. It's something that should not be legislated by the government. And actually, I also want to turn to Planned Parenthood, because yes, Planned Parenthood does provide abortions, but I think, and as Mr. Romney, Governor Romney wants to cut Planned Parenthood, and I think that it's important for us to understand that Planned Parenthood actually provides a lot of important health services for women, such as preventive cancer screenings, things that women need that are vital to women's health. And I think we have to look at the broader scope. As was mentioned earlier, abortion isn't just about where life begins. It's also about protecting the life of the mother, and it's about being safe in every single way. So I once again would reiterate that the president believes that it's a very personal question that the government shouldn't be involved in.
All right, well, thank you.
Follow up just briefly.
20 seconds.
All right. I just wanted to point out, Alex just mentioned that he doesn't believe that the government should impose its religious beliefs on Americans, but I would argue that by allowing abortion, that's preventing religious organizations and the religious beliefs of Americans from carrying out their viewpoints. And their First Amendment clearly defines the freedom of religion. And so I would just argue that that position restricts Americans from having that freedom. And also, I would just counter again, I don't buy the fact that, under Obama's record as a state senator, when he voted, I think it was 4 times, that he supports abortion up to 9 months. I'm sorry, I just don't buy the argument.